And Sky News has learned that Marks and Spencer will announce 500 job cuts at its head office next week. Well, for more now on those job losses at Marks and Spencer's, we're joined by Paul Thomas, retail consultant at Retail Remedy, who's in Rochester in Kent. Very good afternoon to you. Thanks for joining us on Sky News, Mr. Thomas. Firstly, your reaction to this news that Marks and Spencer's is going to axe 500 jobs at its head office?
I think it comes as quite a big surprise. Although it is, I guess, part of the turnaround plan that Steve Rowe has embarked upon. It's not unlike companies who do this kind of piece of work when they're trying to get themselves back on track. And with the strong performance of the food business and how that's been driving so well for M&S in the last couple of 3 years, the clothing side, the GM side, is probably a little bit top heavy in its numbers. So it's probably not unusual to be cutting back in those numbers there. Obviously a tough time for the people involved, but clearly part of the turnaround programme that absolutely needs at Marks and Spencer's.
And on the point of the clothing side of the business, in July, the chief executive, Steve Rowe, he announced that the sharpest like-for-like decline in his clothing business for more than a decade, with sales down 9% in the 13 weeks to the 2nd of July. It wasn't so long ago that everybody was talking about Marks and Spencer's, so why has there been such a change in its fortunes?
Well, clothing's been declining for some time now, and it's the biggest part of their business. And obviously, food's been doing really, really well. It's other competitors are very strong in that market, and Marks and Spencer's not been competitive. They're just not as desirable as perhaps they once were. As a customer, it's quite confusing to shop. There's a high number of sub-brands to try and get around when you're trying to find the clothing. So hopefully, part of this streamlining, we'll see. As we've asked for at Retail Remedy to start to drive down the number of sub-brands and make the customer experience far easier to shop the stores.
So do you think they can turn it round? And if so, what else will they have to do to achieve that goal?
I think they can, and I think they will. I think Marks and Spencer's got a huge number of supporters in the general public. Nobody wants to see Marks and Spencer's fail. They've got a very loyal customer base. They've clearly got quite a large part of the business. Food has done very well for them. If they can replicate that food model within the clothing and the GM side, then they've got a really good chance of turning themselves around.
There will now be a consultation period where they will be talking to those members of staff whose jobs are in jeopardy. What do you expect will come out of that consultation period?
I wouldn't be surprised if there was some announcements about increasing jobs at stores. I think Steve Rowe's already said he wants to increase the number of people in the stores. There may be some displacement to stores. I understand that more than half of the job losses are actually contractors, so not necessarily full-time employed by Marks and Spencer's. So they may have other contracts they can move on to. But clearly they've earmarked a number they want to reduce their total headcount by. So I suspect that's where they're going to go with that. How they get there will obviously form part of the consultation process.
OK, Paul Thomas, really interesting talking to you. Thanks for joining us. That was Paul Thomas, retail consultant at Retail Remedy.